What's going on, my guys? Lost and Found Dating channel, back at it again with another dating topic this week. Excited to be back again, kicking it with the Lost and Found Dating family, dropping gems, dropping knowledge. If you guys haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Click that subscribe button. That way you'll be the first to know when we come out with new content. And without further ado, let's dive into this week's video. All right, fellas, so for this week, we're gonna talk about the difference between dating to win versus dating to not lose. Now, you may be asking yourself, what's the difference? If you're not winning, you're losing. So what do you mean by this distinction between dating to win versus dating to not lose? And some of you may have heard the term before, playing to win versus playing to not lose. And what I'm getting at, what I'm describing, and what I'm gonna go into in this video is sometimes when a guy's getting to know a woman and he's starting to see that he's building some traction, he's building some momentum with her, she's starting to show signs that she's developing interest in him and that she's developing the desire to spend time with him and go on dates with him. Sometimes what that triggers some guys to do is, instead of thinking about ways that they can continue to build that relationship, ways that they can continue to build her interest and continue to move things in a positive direction, sometimes guys, instead of that, start to think in terms of, okay, how do I make sure that I don't mess things up, right? How do I make sure, now I did so much work to get her to start to like me, to get her to want to go on dates with me and spend time with me. Guys get sort of in defense mode and they start to think, okay, how do I make sure that I don't mess this up or I don't make a mistake and cause her to lose interest in me? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So a really good analogy that I like to use to describe that sort of phenomenon where you're dating to not lose as opposed to dating to win is rock climbing, right? So whenever you're doing something like rock climbing, anything that involves heights, scaling a mountain, whatever the case may be, right? What is the rule that they always tell you, right? Don't look down. Whatever you do, don't look down. If you're having some challenges or some adversity, don't panic and don't look down. Now, why is it that they tell you not to look down? Because instead of focusing on how you can continue climbing, how you can continue progressing towards the goal of getting to the top of the mountain, what you then start to focus on is how do I make you focus on kind of how far you've come from the bottom, and then you start to get anxious and you start to get nervous and think, man, I'm up pretty high. It would be horrible if I fell down right now, right? And you start thinking sort of pessimistically instead of optimistically. And when guys do that, sometimes, how I like to describe it is having a approach-based mindset versus an avoidance-based mindset, right? So if I have a goal, if I have something that I'm working towards, whether it's in dating, whether it's business, life, school, education, whatever it may be, an approach-based mindset is where you decide this is the goal that I'm working towards. I want to get an A in this class, or I want to get this GPA, or I want to accomplish these things this year. These are the goals that I have, right? When you have an approach-based mindset, you're thinking positively about sort of the room for improvement and the way in which you can move your life forward and the way in which you can positively impact whatever situation you're in, right? When you have an avoidance-based mindset, you're thinking about all the different things that can go wrong, right? So instead of thinking about how can I do well on this exam, how can I get an A, you're thinking about how do I make sure that I don't fail, right? How do I make sure that I don't do poorly? If you have a woman whom you're interested in, instead of thinking about ways where you can continue to build rapport, instead of thinking about ways where you can challenge yourself to think of even more fun dates and step out of your comfort zone and say, hey, I want to try this, or I want to invite her to this date. Maybe you take a step backwards and you think, man, you know, she's actually liking me and I wasn't even expecting this. You know, I need to kind of play it safe and you know, not do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, and you have more of an avoidance-based mindset where you're trying to avoid making a mistake, right? And whenever we're in situations where we're trying to avoid making a mistake, you know, if you're giving a speech, for example, and you're trying to avoid tripping up over your words, or you're trying to avoid showing that you're nervous, what inevitably always happens is that's what manifests, right? That's what that energy, you convey it and you demonstrate it to people. When you're thinking about how do I make sure I don't trip over my words, how do I make sure I don't look nervous, you tend to look more nervous, right? You tend to fumble over your words and look like you're not comfortable with speaking. It's the same thing. When you're in a woman's presence and you're thinking in the back of your mind, okay, how do I make sure that I look confident? How do I make sure that I don't say something stupid or something that's gonna reflect poorly on my part? Because you're overthinking, you're so much in your head, you're actually more likely to do those things, because you're not just sort of being comfortable, you're not just being yourself, you're not just thinking about how you can positively impact the situation. You're thinking about how to avoid making a mistake or how to avoid jeopardizing the chemistry and the momentum that you've built thus far. Woo! Dropping gems on them. Gem Dropper J, Gem Dropper J. And I'll even share a personal example with you guys. I grew up playing sports my entire life. Almost every single sport out there: baseball, basketball, soccer, football, ice hockey, tons of different sports. So I've been in a variety of different team environments. I've been on a bunch of different teams, some successful teams, some teams that weren't as successful. And I've also played, or I should say have been coached by a variety of different coaches. And I would always notice when it came to sports, when it came to athletics, when I had a coach who maybe they were intense, maybe they had high expectations, but I knew that at the end of the day, they wanted me to do well. I knew that when they were critiquing and when they were criticizing me, it came from a place of love, it came from a place of support. When I knew that this was a coach who was giving me constructive feedback and who was telling me things because he wanted me to do well and because he wanted me to excel and positively impact the game. Even if, like I said, even if that coach was very intense, even if that coach was loud and liked to scream and kind of got in your face, I would always do well in those situations, because I knew the criticism and the coaching, even if it was direct, even if it was intense, it was coming from a position of love, right? So when I stepped onto the field or when I stepped onto the court, I wasn't anxious about performing badly, because I knew that at the end of the day, you know, the coach cared about me. It wasn't just about, you know, how I performed in the team environment. You know, the coach cared about me as an individual. All those things came into play. As opposed to, I've played for coaches who, if you made a mistake, if there was any opportunity to criticize you, they use it as an opportunity to humiliate you, to embarrass you, to ridicule you, and kind of make an example of you in front of the team. And whenever I was in those types of scenarios or played for those kinds of coaches, I was always second guessing myself, and I ended up playing poorly because I wasn't just able to step on the field and be myself and just kind of act and play sports instinctively. I was always thinking, okay, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't look bad, you know, don't make a mistake, because I knew with that mistake came someone who was gonna humiliate me, who was gonna try to embarrass me and just, you know, put me down as far as that situation. So, man, I went on, I don't even know where I was going with this. Where was I going with this? Oh, with stories. The point of that is when you have an approach-based mindset and you're thinking of, even if you're nervous, you're anxious about the situation, but you know, okay, at the end of the day, my goal is to help the team win. My goal is to help the team do well. Even if I'm in a high pressure situation, I know that I have a goal that I'm working towards. It's always gonna be much better than when you're in a scenario and your goal isn't something to progressively work towards, but something to avoid doing, right? So if you're thinking about not making a mistake, if you're thinking about not messing up, if you're thinking about, you know, what if I invite her on this date and she doesn't really like it, or what if I, you know, plan this activity and it ends up being horribly. If you think about the dates that you're going on and you think about the dynamic in that light, you're actually I would say you're more likely to kind of manifest the negative things that you're thinking about in that sort of negative pattern that you have running through your mind. That's a super good example. And even what you mentioned before was kind of like, if you're doing things, not only if you're doing things because you expect a certain outcome, but if you're doing something out of fear, like, because part of you could be feeling like, man, if I don't do it, she's gonna be upset with me, or, you know, it's gonna negatively impact our relationship. So it's like doing something out of fear or doing something to avoid something negative happening is different from doing something because you want something positive to happen. That makes sense. Yeah. Fun fact for you guys, as a psychology major, I'll share a little fun psychological fact. Your brain doesn't respond to a negative instruction or a negative command. So to give you a perfect example, right? You're watching this video. If I said, okay, for the next 10 seconds, I want you to not think about squirrels. Did you think about a squirrel?
Yeah.
You're right. You can't help yourself from doing it, because the brain doesn't, like I said, it doesn't respond to negative commands. So if I say don't do this or don't think about this, all the brain hears is blank, think about this. So it's really like your mind is hearing blank, think about squirrels, right? And you thought about squirrels, even though I said not, even though I said or even though I said don't. Your brain, when you're talking to yourself and you're saying, okay, don't do this, don't do this, your brain doesn't process that as a negative command. It only processes positive commands. And I remember even when I first took my driver's test, when I was first learning how to drive, one of the things the instructor said, he was like, let's say you're navigating a tight space, and like, you ever been driving and a big, you know, truck comes alongside you, instinctively you want to be like, you know, don't hit the truck, or don't, you know, run into the divider. And he was like, don't think that way. In your mind, don't tell yourself to not hit the other car, don't tell yourself to not run into the divider, tell yourself to stay in your lane, right? You use like a positive reference as opposed to a negative command of don't do this. So that had me thinking, even back then, it's like, don't tell yourself to not do something, or don't tell yourself to avoid, you know, don't tell yourself to don't spend too much money. Instead, phrase it as, you know, save money, right? Don't tell yourself, you know, I want to live a life where I'm not broke. Tell yourself, I want to live a life where I'm wealthy, right? Have a positive referential point that you're working towards instead of trying to escape a negative, right? You know, same thing with sadness and happiness. You don't wake up in the morning and go, man, I want to have a not sad day today. No, you want to be thinking like, I want to have a happy day, I want to have a joyful day. So it's about reframing things. And again, going back to dating, it's about reframing something that maybe you've typically looked at as a negative. You know, don't mess up, don't say the wrong thing, don't look nervous, you know, don't stumble over my words when I go up to her and approach her and start a conversation. Instead, think of it in a positive way. Think, okay, be confident, okay, be poised, be assertive, be decisive, right? Think about whenever you're telling yourself to not do something or trying to prevent yourself from doing something, in this case, messing up with regards to, chemistry that you're developing with a woman, don't think about it in terms of negative, think about it in terms of the positive and the things that you do want, the things in the places where you do want to bring that relationship. So as I wrap things up, always remember, guys, too, that you can be confident. Like I said, having that positive mindset, you can be confident without being cocky. It's not about going into the situation like, oh, I'm perfect and every single thing that I do she's gonna like. But it's about being confident and knowing too, if you're developing chemistry with her, if you've been going on several dates, the 4th, 5th, 6th date, understand that, give yourself some credit. That means she enjoyed herself, the 1st date, the 2nd date, all of the dates leading up to it, right? So you already know that you have somewhat of a recipe for developing chemistry with her. She sees something in you that she likes or that she looks forward to being around. Otherwise, there wouldn't even be an opportunity to, quote unquote, mess up, right? If you're thinking about possibly sabotaging things or messing things up, understand that you're probably already at a point where she has a significant level of interest in you to begin with, right? So focus on growing that, focus on building that. Don't focus on, potentially doing something to sabotage it. So again, having that mindset, you want to date to win as opposed to dating to not lose. So wrapping things up, guys, hope you got some valuable nuggets from this video. Hope you enjoyed some of the personal examples that I gave there. If you did like the video, click that like button. Feel free to leave a comment. We love being able to interact with the viewers and chat with you guys. Feel free to share your thoughts and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be the very first to know when we come out with new content each and every week. Signing off and signing out. Double salute. Wipe me down. Peace.